A Marine Expeditionary Unit has been deployed to the Strait of Hormuz. According to reports, approximately 2,200 Marines are now positioned at the most consequential energy choke point on Earth. Operation Epic Fury against Iran enters its third week. This is not a training exercise. This is not a routine rotation. This is a deliberate, calculated military positioning at a waterway that is currently commercially closed, where more than a dozen commercial vessels have been struck since February 28th, and where the gap between deterrence and active confrontation is measured in miles, not in diplomatic timetables. To understand what this deployment actually means, militarily, economically, and geopolitically, you need to start with what a Marine Expeditionary Unit is and what it is specifically designed to do, because the details of its structure tell you more about the mission than any official statement will. A Marine Expeditionary Unit, or MU, is one of the most versatile and rapidly deployable combat formations in the entire United States military. It's a self-contained fighting force built around three integrated elements. The ground combat element is built around a reinforced infantry battalion. The core maneuver force, capable of conducting amphibious assaults, raids, and sustained ground operations. The aviation combat element includes attack helicopters, tiltrotor aircraft, canned transport capabilities, providing organic air support and the ability to insert and extract forces rapidly from any terrain within range. The logistics combat element allows the entire unit to sustain independent operations for up to 15 days without external resupply, a critical capability in a contested environment where supply lines may be disrupted. And MU does not travel alone. It operates as part of an Amphibious Ready Group, typically an amphibious assault ship, a transport dock, and a dock landing ship. These vessels carry landing craft, amphibious vehicles, and enough combined firepower to project force from the sea onto any coastline within range. When the United States positions a Marine Expeditionary Unit with its Amphibious Ready Group at the entrance to the Persian Gulf during an active military conflict, it is placing a rapid reaction strike force within operational range of some of the most strategically significant coastline on the planet. The question being asked in every defense and intelligence planning room right now is not whether this deployment is significant. It clearly is. The question is whether its mission is defensive deterrence, protecting commercial shipping and U.S. assets from Iranian action, or forward positioning for offensive. Options targeting Iranian military infrastructure, Revolutionary Guard installations, or coastal missile batteries along the northern shore of the strait. That distinction has enormous implications, and the answer has not been officially confirmed. The Strait of Hormuz is the single most important energy choke point in the world, and the gap between its scale and its physical dimensions is the defining strategic fact of this conflict. At its narrowest point, the strait is roughly 21 miles wide. The shipping lanes that tankers actually use are even narrower, approximately 2 miles wide in each direction, separated by a 2-mile buffer zone. Every day, approximately 20 to 21 million barrels of crude oil pass through this corridor. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, roughly 20% of the entire world's petroleum supply moving through a passage. You can almost see across on a clear day. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar all depend on the Strait of Hormuz to export their oil and liquefied natural gas to the rest of the world. The only alternative routes that exist carry a combined 2.6 million barrels per day. You cannot replace 20 million with 2.6. There's no plan B at that scale. Iran sits directly on the northern shore of the strait. The Iranian coastline runs along its entire length. And Iran has spent decades building a military infrastructure specifically designed to threaten, and if necessary, shut down, traffic through those waters. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates a large fleet of fast attack boats armed with rockets and anti-ship missiles, designed to swarm larger ships through what military strategists call asymmetric warfare. Iran also possesses a significant arsenal of anti-ship cruise missiles and ballistic missiles that can be launched from mobile platforms along its coastline, making them extremely difficult to locate and neutralize before they fire. On top of that, Iran holds what U.S. defense analysts estimate as thousands of naval mines, ranging from simple contact mines to more sophisticated influence mines triggered by the magnetic, seismic, or acoustic profile of a passing ship. The combination, fast attack swarms, mobile coastal missile batteries, and a mine stockpile of that scale is precisely why the deployment of an MEU into this environment carries a different weight than any routine naval presence. The history of what American-Iranian confrontation in these waters actually looks like is documented precisely, and it matters now. In April 1988, the USS Samuel B. Roberts, a guided missile frigate, struck an Iranian mine while operating in the Persian Gulf. The explosion blew a hole in the ship's hull, nearly sinking it, and injured 10 American sailors. The U.S. Navy's response was Operation Praying Mantis, launched on April 18, 1988, in a single day. The U.S. Navy destroyed or damaged half of Iran's operational naval fleet, which remains the largest American naval battle since World War II. That history establishes several things that are directly relevant to March 2026. First, that American and Iranian forces have shot at each other in this exact body of water. Second, an escalation in these waters can move from a single mine strike to the largest naval battle in decades in less than 2 weeks. Third, that Iran's naval capacity, while far more advanced today than in 1988, has already demonstrated a willingness to absorb the consequences of direct confrontation with the United States in this geography. The military capabilities on both sides have advanced dramatically since Operation Praying Mantis. The United States Navy today operates carrier strike groups, guided missile destroyers equipped with the Aegis combat system, and submarine-launched cruise missiles that provide an overwhelming advantage in conventional naval combat. But Iran has also evolved. Its missile technology is significantly more advanced. Its drone capabilities have been demonstrated repeatedly across this conflict and in the Houthi campaign in the Red Sea throughout 2024 and 2025, which was largely enabled by Iranian-supplied weapons and training. That campaign demonstrated precisely how difficult it is to fully protect commercial maritime traffic in contested waters. Even with a substantial naval presence, the USS Carney expended an extraordinary volume of interceptor missiles in a single week of that campaign, according to defense reporting, a cost asymmetry that Iran has studied, documented, and now applied to the Strait of Hormuz. The economic dimension of this deployment is where its consequences extend beyond the military planning rooms and into every household that buys fuel, services a mortgage, or holds a retirement account. Crude oil prices are influenced by dozens of factors: OPEC plus production quotas, refinery capacity, seasonal demand, inventory levels. But nothing moves oil prices faster or harder than a perceived threat to physical supply, especially when that threat involves the choke point through which 20% of the world's oil flows. Even before Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th, the presence of an escalating military standoff near the Strait of Hormuz was introducing what traders call a risk premium into oil prices. Extra costs baked into every barrel to account for the possibility of supply disruption. When tensions in the Gulf were elevated in 2019, after Iran seized a British-flagged tanker and the United States came close to striking Iran before pulling back, oil prices spiked significantly, even though actual supply was never interrupted. The market prices in fear before it prices in reality. On March 14th, day 15th of the current conflict, Brent crude closed at $103.14 per barrel, according to CNBC, up from $72.87 on the eve of the war, a 42% increase in 15 days. Brent briefly touched $126 per barrel at its peak. The IEA called this the largest oil supply disruption in the history of global energy markets, larger than the Arab oil embargo of the 1970s. The IEA in more than 30 nations released 400 million barrels from strategic reserves, the largest emergency stockpile action in the IEA's 50-year history. Markets absorbed it, and prices kept rising. Iran's military command issued a statement via Reuters. Not 1 liter of oil will get through. Expect oil at $200 per barrel. That is not a negotiating signal. That is a publicly declared operational objective from the military organization, now facing an entrant to its primary strategic tool, steady energy projects. Brent reaching $115 in a 2-month war scenario and $135 if the conflict extends to 4 months. Energy analysts who have modeled scenarios involving a sustained physical closure of the strait have projected prices exceeding $200 per barrel under extended disruption conditions. The insurance dimension is the mechanism that closed the strait commercially before any physical barrier existed in the water, and it is the layer that makes the MU's presence operationally complicated in ways most coverage does not fully address. Within days of February 28th, major war risk insurers pulled coverage for the Persian Gulf entirely. Norway's Guard and Schooled, UK-based P&I clubs, and the New York-based American Club all exited the market, coordinated, rapid, and total across every major underwriting desk. Without war risk coverage, no captain can legally transit the strait. It does not matter how many U.S. destroyers or marine assault ships are visible on the horizon. No insurance means no movement. Helly McCroft, Global Head of Commodity Strategy at RBC Capital Markets, described the mechanism directly. All Iran had to do was several drone strikes near the strait, and insurers decided transit was unsafe. No formal blockade required. The benchmark freight rate for the very large crude carriers that move, oil to China surged to an all-time record of $423,360 per day, a 94% jump in a single weekend. Energy Secretary Chris Wright told CNBC as of March 13th, "It can't happen now. We're simply not ready," referring to Navy-escorted tanker transits. He said, escorts might begin by the end of the month at the earliest. An Atlantic Council analyst told CBS News directly, Iran can strike ships anywhere in the Gulf without mining the strait at all. That capacity is precisely why U.S. warships have not yet entered the waterway. The MEU's presence changes the deterrence calculus. It does not automatically resolve the insurance market's assessment of risk. Those are two different calculations, and they do not move on the same timeline. The geopolitical architecture surrounding this deployment extends well beyond the strait itself. Bahrain hosts the U.S. 5th Fleet headquarters. Qatar is home to Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East. The UAE has been a key partner in defense cooperation. Saudi Arabia, despite a complicated relationship with Washington, shares a fundamental strategic interest in keeping the Strait of Hormuz open and countering Iranian regional influence. These alliances provide basing, logistics, and intelligence sharing capabilities critical to sustaining the current military posture. But Iran is not without its own strategic network. Tehran has cultivated a web of allied and proxy forces across the region that significantly extends its ability to impose costs on adversaries beyond the strait itself. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and Shia militia groups in Iraq and Syria all operate with varying degrees of Iranian support, funding, training, and weapon supply. If the MU deployment leads to direct confrontation, the risk of these forces activating against U.S. interests simultaneously across the region is a confirmed planning variable, not a hypothetical. That multi-front dimension of Iran's strategic posture is precisely what makes any military engagement at the Strait of Hormuz more complicated than the caveat alone suggests. China is one of the largest importers of Iranian oil, and any sustained disruption to Gulf energy flows directly threatens Chinese economic stability, a fact that shapes Beijing's engagement with both sides of this conflict. Russia shares Iran's interest in challenging American regional dominance. In a protracted US-Iran conflict creates diplomatic and strategic openings that neither Beijing nor Moscow would leave unexploited. For specific indicators are being watched by analysts, military planners, and intelligence professionals to determine where this deployment leads. The first is rules of engagement in the water itself. How closely U.S. and Iranian naval forces are operating near each other, and how aggressive those interactions are becoming. Close encounters between warships and IRGC fast attack boats in the 2-mile shipping lanes of the strait can escalate from posturing to shooting in minutes, not hours. The second is Iranian mining activity. Any intelligence suggesting that Iran is preparing to deploy naval mines in or near the strait would represent the most serious single escalation signal available, because mines do not require a launch window, a radar lock, or a crew. They simply wait. The third is diplomatic back-channel activity. If intermediary nations, particularly Oman, which has historically served as the primary mediator between Washington and Tehran, are actively communicating, that signals both sides are still managing the situation, short of full escalation. As of March 13th, no formal talks are scheduled, and no confirmed off-ramp is visible. The fourth is the commercial shipping response to the MEU's presence. War risk insurance premiums are one of the most reliable, real-time indicators of how the maritime industry assesses conflict probability. When those premiums spike, and they already have, to record levels, it means the people whose money is on the line believe the threat is real and present. The deployment of approximately 2,200 Marines to the Strait of Hormuz is simultaneously a military decision, an economic signal, and a geopolitical statement. Whether it produces deterrence and eventual de-escalation or contributes to confrontation and a deepening energy crisis will depend on decisions being made now in Washington, in Tehran, in military command centers, and in the underwriting desks of the insurance firms that closed this waterway before the first Marine arrived. The forces of military positioning and commercial reality are pulling in different directions. And what happens in the narrow window between them is the defining question of this conflict's next phase.